very interesting topic of Jesus and the bulls of Bashan. How is Jesus connected to these bulls in Psalm 22? And are these real animals or perhaps spiritual entities?
Okay, so let's have a look at the psalm first. All right, so um, Psalm 22, verse 1. To the choir master, according to the doe of the dawn. So that's a note on the musical arrangement for this song, a psalm of David. So we've got David ascribed there as the author, and of course he, as the king of Israel, enthroned, is sort of a precursor to Jesus, the greatest king of all. And he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? And he goes on and on. But that first line is familiar to anyone who's read the story of the crucifixion, right? Because Jesus calls out these words. And why? Why does he say this? Well, firstly, Jesus is, he's not just divine, he's not just God, he's also a man, and he's suffering and he's going through some hard times. And I think it's natural for anyone going through such intense pain and anguish to cry out in such a way. So I think we've got to feel for the humanity of Jesus, but he's also aware of things going on that we don't see, and that people on the ground at the crucifixion couldn't see. Okay, because he knows what's going on in the supernatural realm. It's as clear to him as, I'm looking at you now. And we come down to verse 12 of this psalm, which Jesus has quoted and therefore alluded to. And it says, many bulls encompass me, strong bulls of Bashan surround me. They open wide their mouths at me like a ravening and roaring lion. And it goes on. Dogs encompass me, a company of evildoers encircles me. They have pierced my hands and feet. And so it goes on. So this bulls of Bashan, well, you might remember I was talking about that inscription on Mount Hermon, right? The great bull was mentioned in that text. In just looking for that quote now, because I don't want to misquote. According to the command of the great bull god Batios, which is derived from Bashan, okay, because in Canaanite that's Batan, okay, and the Greeks have gone Batios from the Canaanite, right? Those swearing an oath in this place go forth. So this ties right back, and of course Jesus is not ignorant of the Enochic tradition or the rest too. He knows that stuff. In fact, he calls First Enoch scripture in other places. So he knows about this stuff. The cultural connections are not lost on his audience, right? So he quotes Psalm 22. The context, afforded by that psalm enables him to communicate something about what he sees in the unseen realm going on at the time of his crucifixion. And what he's saying is that these demons, these unclean spirits, the fallen sons of God, if you like, or shall we say the rebellious sons of God, because they didn't really fall, did they? They are mocking Jesus at this time. They are gloating. They think they've won. They're surrounding him, taunting him. They're reveling in this situation where they've got him on the ropes. Jesus is nailed to a cross. They've got the only begotten Son of God about to die, and of course they don't realize that Jesus is going to overcome death, and he's going to snatch the keys of death from them. So it's a really significant passage where Jesus quotes that psalm, particularly if you see the background and if you're aware of the uh, culture that informs all of that, uh, which Jesus was clearly aware of and was communicating very subtly there. But yeah, it puts an extra dimension on the crucifixion as we consider it.
Yeah, and maybe a sub question of this question is how does this help us to understand the Old Testament giants in a better light when it comes to Jesus quoting Psalm 22, being surrounded by the spiritual entities which he called as the bulls of Bashan? How can we correlate this with Nephilim?
Yeah, so the Nephilim, uh, as we've established, were the original product of the rebellious sons of God uh, interfering with human women and producing these giant offspring, which terrorized the pre-flood world in terms of their violence and their subjugation of humanity to the point of almost extinction, were it not for Noah and his family. Once again, in the post flood world, we have people accessing those spirits and using them to gain power to again oppress and subjugate people and to bring them under their dominion for their own benefit, which is again why the conquest was necessary to free the indigenous people of Canaan from the oppression and the tyranny and the violence of the giant clans. Right, this is going on again and again, over and over. It just keeps coming up, and the progress through the Bible is a very slow, gradual process of uh, taking that element of chaos and disorder and opposition to God and progressively eliminating it over time. So, uh, first we have the original uh, Nephilim, the giants drowned in the flood. The spirits come back, they start empowering people, and um, those people are wiped out. Then we're left with the demons, who again are disembodied spirits. They can afflict people and they cause all sorts of problems for them, as the Gospels make clear. And we see Jesus casting them out, particularly with the story of Legion is significant because he is in the region of the Gerasenes, which is where the Girgashite clan ended up when they fled, because the only one of the clans of the Anakim that actually did what they were supposed to do and fled from before Joshua and his army was the clan of the Girgashites. And they end up in this place, which is later called the land of the Gerasenes, which is, transliteration of the same sort of thing. And all these demons are there, right? Because the giants have long since died, and the spirits are still there, and they turn up in this guy named Legion. And so along comes Jesus, and as I say in my book, he is the solution to the giant question, and he is able to set this man free and cast them out. So we see this progressive elimination of cosmic evil from the world through people uh, acting as the body of God by maintaining allegiance to Him and doing His works. Okay, we saw it in Joshua, we see it again in Jesus, of course, fully in Jesus, but there's still more work to be done, and that's where the church comes in, right? And anyone faithful to Yahweh falls within that group of people who are able to act as God's body on earth, to continue this work of driving out evil and reclaiming the world as as our place of residence, uh, for God, and dedicating that sacred space back to Him. So this is what we see happening throughout, and that comes into the disciples that Jesus sends out. Luke chapter 10, He sends out the 70 disciples. Why are there 70? Well, because we had 70 nations back at Babel, right? Remember, all this uh, proliferated through the world because of the Babel event. And a lot of people would be unfamiliar with that because it just sounds like a story about the origin of languages. That's the way people talk about it these days. I would argue that the story is actually about the proliferation of idolatry in terms of this the cult of the Rephaim, and spreading this idea of people becoming gods by assuming the power of the Nephilim, which was then dispersed through the nations, and why all these nations had these divinized kings and that sort of thing. So the idea of sending out 70 disciples is about directly tackling that and taking back the world under allegiance to Yahweh.